Steve, episode 50 of the Broadway Block. Can you believe we did 50 podcast episodes already?
Here we go, man.
Here we go. Today we got on the block. Who are your best New York Rangers free agent signings and who are your top 3 worst New York Rangers free agent signings?
Me starting with me.
No,
Best
not you as a free agent signing. The Rangers did not sign Steve
best has to be Panarin of my lifetime. Like
of your lifetime.
yeah, Panarin has to be number one. But I
Number
guess three of them, huh? Grabner sticks out in my head as one of those guys that, especially like you think about the team right now, like trying to grab at straws, giving a guy a chance. He came in and I think immediately. I mean, his 5-on-5 numbers were great. I remember the
His
penalty kill,
goals
how
were
many
great.
breakaways. Very exciting to watch. And then you flip them for assets as well. I think it really stood true to like what we're doing right now is trying to get the best of a player while you kind of have them. So I feel like just a quality kind of signing overall. Um, Strawman ended up being a pretty good player. He obviously goes on to the Bolts and then the Panthers, but we're talking guys that hung out. I mean, Gabrick was a fantastic player.
You
So
can only
yeah,
have three. You can only have three.
all right. Gabrick has to be above Grabner and then Panarin. Panarin's definitely. I mean, how can he not? He comes in immediately successful, has chemistry with the squad. Um, I mean, yeah, and is on. Everyone, has something to say about the playoff performance, but I feel like the 1.38 goal, points per game pace that he's been on for the last, I mean, 3 years. He's up there in top five scoring for all these seasons. So Panarin's got to be one of the at least the best of my lifetime. What would be your three?
Well, ironically, same on my list. Number one, actually, I'll go from the top. Bottom three, number three best New York Ranger free agent signing. I have Marian Gabrick. He came to the team. He made an immediate impact when he was healthy. He was scoring goals. He was making his teammates better. Um, Minus that second season with that rough boarding call, it makes you kind of think what could have been with the Rangers if that didn't happen. Number two, I got Wayne Gretzky. We didn't see the team around Wayne, and this is player bias because I'm a huge Wayne Gretzky fan. It's one of the reasons why I'm a Rangers fan. We share the same birth date. So as a kid
You
growing
too?
up, yeah, January 26th, me and Wayne Gretzky. And as a kid growing up in New Jersey, and when the Devils started winning cups, like everyone around us was, if the team around your area is winning, everybody expects you to be part of that fan base. And I just wasn't. I wore number 99. So that's the little backstory for me and Wayne Gretzky. But he signed a 2-year, $8 million deal. We went to the Eastern Conference Finals his first year. Sucked. We lost to the Flyers in 5, I think that was. And the chemistry never was fully like what everyone thought it was going to be with him and Messier. Never happened. But it was just kind of cool to see the great one come to Broadway and put up numbers. I think his second year he led in assists for the Rangers. So for me, that was my number two, and then my number one, the Bread Man. The story's still being written. I think stealing him away from the Islanders was just one of those things because that could have pushed them over to beating the Bolts those 2 years in the Eastern Conference Finals. So to have a direct effect on one of our main rivals, awesome. Every time he steps on the ice, it's kind of electric to watch him play. I think the playoff chemistry will be there, like when we get back there this year. So that's my number one guy, Breadman, Artemi Panarin.
Hard not to argue. I mean, as far as making an immediate difference, as far as like, everybody talks about the playoffs, but like you got to get there. And without Panarin,
I
I
don't
don't
even
think
think
you
we would
have
be
a
there.
shot every day.
Yeah. All right. So now we got what do we got Who are the worst New York Rangers free agent signings for you, Steve?
I mean, recent memory, Patrick Nemeth and Tenorti. I think we can just kind of bundle up as a just
That
a
those are like
no.
honorable mentions though. They like we were able to keep it moving with those guys. Like yeah, it sucked to watch them out there, but
I think we're still paying Tenorti, no?
we
Um,
might be. I don't
it's hard to really get on board with that. I don't know. You want to say maybe Scott Gomez is like a bad one, but not when you think about the trade.
you can't
Uh,
think about it. It's just a free agent signing.
yeah,
If that trade never happened, because I'll give you a little. He's my number three worst one.
okay. I mean, like it takes the sting off. You
It
know what I
takes
mean?
the sting off it, but if that didn't happen, if the Habs weren't stupid enough to do that,
I think no, I think I'm solid in my combo for three. Gomez was bad, but it takes the sting off. It's not that. What would be the worst? Maybe I'm having like memory loss. I can't think of like a really bad bum one that we've had at least recently. Trying to think of someone who just didn't really work out. Who's your three while
well,
I'm
no, Scott
contemplating?
Gomez was my number three. Number two for me, we'll do my list real quick. My number two, this will get the gears going for you, Steve. My number two was Kevin Shattenkirk, only because the hype train was like so high. Like he
Yeah,
never played how he played on the Blues. Even the Caps got him for a little partial season there, and he never played to the performance that he gave them. Um, so that was rough because it was a 4 year deal, and I think we're still paying him for that 26.6 million. And he was another like we wanted him to be like a Fox, like meaning like another hometown player coming back, like good
right.
feeling, but also the same thing as Scott Gomez. Like the team wasn't ready for that kind of player to be around. Like we were in the middle of the rebuild, so it's like he didn't really have a place. My worst one would be, and this is probably a lot of people are going to debate this one, would be Brad Richards. Like okay, we were so desperate for a centerman like that we gave him that big contract. He was already 11 years in the league by the time we gave him that contract, which like the NHL is just starting to be comparable to the numbers of that 9 year, $60 million contract. So we got good play out of him. We got decent play in the playoffs with him. He was reunited with Marty St. Louis to try to win a cup for us, but didn't. And then the extra hurt for me is not only did we get not the best Brad Richards, but then after he left, after we did the compliance buyout, he went to the Blackhawks and won a cup. Like, okay. So that really added an extra sting in there for me. So for me, that was my number one Brad Richards worst NHL free agent signing.
I would say that a lot of the allure um to come to New York has to be here, but we're in this like unique spot now where it's like there's not a lot of money to pay out for a free agent. But at the same time, it's like a catch 22. Like you need an attractive team
Yeah,
to
you
draw
need
those
to
people
get
in,
other
and we
people.
have that team, but we don't have the money to spend on like a marquee free agent. So it's like, you know, all of these, I guess when I think about those best ones and Grabner, I think shines in a
Pouliot was
lot of
also
ways.
a great one.
I'm sorry.
Pouliot,
Like guys that are workhorses, exactly like that
one
will,
year deals that don't break the bank. Like
yeah, they don't break the
maybe
bank.
Tyler Mott might make that list as like one of the best trades. Like later.
Yeah, and guys that I think immediately come in and know what their job is, and people might put Ryan Reeves on that list of a bad free agency signing, especially like if we're just talking production. But as far as I think coming in, knowing your role and setting a tone um, for what needs to be done, that it goes to say when you take that contract on, you come on knowing exactly what is expected of you, and a guy like Panarin, that is what is expected of you, and that's why he's such a great asset because I think everyone who saw him coming in was expecting, an 80 to 90 point player, and that's what we got, and then some. So, and with from what he's shown, I mean, he can replicate it, I feel like, on a consistent level. So I think with those expectations and exceeding those is what
It's
makes
funny you
Panarin
say
better.
the Ryan Reeves thing. I was actually went to go grab a tea for the podcast today, and I saw my Brashear T-shirt in there, and I was like, "Ah, oh, remember that when we needed tough guys? That was like our last round when we were like, we need some tough guys here." And I was like, I wonder if Ryan Reeves will go down like that, like same kind of thing. Like we needed tough guys, so we brought him in.
Yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, I feel like he has such a long career in some behind the bench aspect, because I feel like he really embodies to me what the team is all about, or what a team is all about. He hypes up everybody. He's one of those dudes that knows exactly why he's there, and it's tough for me to justify his on ice performance with what he brings to the locker room. So I hope for him he's got a long career in
Well,
coaching
he
in
he
some
did give
aspect.
us. He was leading at parts of the season last year in hits in the league, and he had his most assists he's had career wise with us. So like the numbers for him where he's like, what more can I give you guys? I'm giving you all I got here. Like
This is
this is it.
max production.
Yeah, that's what it is. So
Right. Well, it's hard to justify it, especially with the money that could be spent on a guy like Mott, and you lose out on a guy like
but
that
those are
can
like
execute so
happy
well.
findings, like like everybody you don't realize, like like a
Sure.
Grabner's coming or a Mott like that. Like you
Those
don't
are the players that we need to kind of, I think, if we're gonna attract anybody over that's gonna fit in really well, it has to be one of those budget type players. And that's what I think makes players like Jesper Fast, losing guys like that, stand out even more, because it's like you already had the work engine role type players that were gonna
but now we're like, all
sign
right,
up for
now
a
we got rid of
budget.
that guy. We need to find the next guy who's our workhorse. Yeah.
Yeah, and just hope that they'll kind of be on board and buy into the process. So I think for us, our options are pretty, limited, as far as signing anybody out there who's, really available. I'm interested actually to check out Carpenter. He sounds like a nice little role kind of player that might kind of challenge a guy like Hunt in that fourth line role. So we'll see. And hopefully one of these guys can latch on to a career year for themselves and etch out a role, because you need those guys.
So did you have your who was your worst New York Rangers?
If I'm gonna say recency bias, I'm gonna go with the Nemeth and Tenorti as
As
two and a three, because it's so wrongfully, it's so in the right direction, but so like wrongfully managed that those guys really stand out in my head.
I think even
And
when that
Boone
Nemeth
has
signing happened, we were both like, okay, like, well, he could be good. We need a little. He's a little tougher back there, a little bigger guy, Nemeth.
and to your point, Shattenkirk, like, being like the end all be all to that is that he ended up finding success somewhere else. So it's like it even stings more for guys like that.
And now he's on the Ducks. Does every
Right, that
are they the new Rangers, like West Coast? Like how we
well,
used to
so
have
they
the
got Vetrano, right? They got
Stromer.
Stromer.
There was someone else I saw on their roster that I was like, wait, he plays for them?
That doesn't matter.
It
But
doesn't matter, but like that's what it got me thinking.
yeah. Well, that's where we're at, man. It's like people have to kind of look at these guys that had some success somewhere, or give them a shot. And guys like D'Angelo is gonna get a chance, somewhere all the time, because someone's gonna always justify that their whatever performance, whether it be on ice or off the ice, is always, worth a shot somewhere else. So, I mean,
Well, I that's what I do love about the NHL. Like everybody usually gets a second, third,
third,
maybe
fourth,
even a
fifth, yeah,
fourth, fifth go round. Like so,
yeah,
you're a
Jimmy
little.
VC.
As we're celebrating our 50th episode, one of the things me and Steve always went back and forth on was, is David Quinn going to get rehired somewhere as a head coach? I was all gloating when I saw the Bruins passed on him. I was like, no way, no one else is taking him. And boom, Mr. Steve Shark Attack over there, he called it. So that was the one fun thing for us as the Broadway Block. Anybody that watches that, Steve called the David Quinn thing. And if it doesn't work out there, I'm sure he's going to get another shot somewhere too.
Well, he's young too, and that I think that's I think if anything, it kind of goes in his favor the way, like in hindsight, the way that it all ended, because it did kind of seem unwarranted. And then
Yeah,
when they
he was
clean
like,
out,
"Where I'm fired."
right, and when they clean out the rest of the house, then it leads you to think, oh man, maybe he wasn't the problem. So the the Sharks are also in a spot where like what would be a bad enough season? They were already like, one of the worst teams. And like when you go into long stretches like that of being a bad team, it warrants a new coach, sure, but what pressure is on him for them to really succeed right out of the gate, and how long of a leash do they have? Are they gonna,
But
kind of start blowing it up and tearing things down? Because um you have to
that's a
kind of
good
start to
point,
question
though.
that when you're in a position. Sorry, go ahead.
It's a good point what you're saying, though. Like when you're that bad, like you go through like 2 to 3 year coaches, year and a half coaches until you find that guy that you can be like, all right, well, we can finally start rebuilding. So maybe he's just a transition coach.
Yeah, and like that's not a bad way to do things until you find some success somewhere. And then again, if they end up doing, what would be them performing well for him to continue working there for a good amount of time, 15th place or greater would be a success, but probably 20th to 15th is where they're finished, and then that'll be looked at as like, they'll do a great job. So we'll see. Who are you like, I guess, who do you think's got a boom or bust kind of over their head? Because there's a few teams that if they don't perform, there's really kind of a clock on them. Like the Bruins,
I, I'll give
can
you
kind of
two
make some
from
decisions. The
two from the
Penguins, maybe.
yeah. I'll give you two from the East Coast and then two from the West Coast.
All right, perfect.
Boomer bust is like, well, for our boy Lindsey Ruff, like if they don't start looking semi-competitive in New Jersey, like he's gonna be gone. Then like firing the coach, then all those other players got to learn a whole new system, everything, new coaches. So I'm gonna say the Devils, and then I'm gonna also go and say the Panthers. Um, Panthers were like, they look great. They had the most points last year and everything. So I think if they don't show success again, especially after firing their coach, then that's kind of a boom or bust breakdown kind of thing. On the West Coast, I would have to say the Blues. Blues have been stacked up for a while now that like, I don't know where they sit on contracts and who's due money, who isn't, whose contract's expiring, but they have Tarasenko, they have all these guys over there that you got to think like, if that doesn't work, then you got to break it down. Um my other one would have to be the Stars. The Stars are similar to like the Blues in the sense that they've been piling on pieces and building around that like core pieces, but nothing's really come of it. So I think it's a breaker must like make the playoffs and have a deep run this year for them. You could honorably mention the Wild as well for that.
Yeah, I was gonna say the Wild are kind of in like a weird cap
Yeah,
situation where, and this is also if Kriprasov comes back in a way where he can have a meaningful season like he did the year before and replicate that. For a team that could really do either one, the Canadians, I feel like, where they were and a season ago and where they were 2 seasons before that. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they made a push and made some meaningful games out of it late in the year.
I
But I
think
will
they
also
could
wouldn't be
be all up
surprised.
and down with like like
Yeah, and they could get on some streaks, is what I'm saying. But I also wouldn't be surprised if they were kind of at the bottom of the division for a while. As
so you
far
don't
as
you don't see Sean Monahan lifting the cup for them this year.
I don't. It's fine too because I think that they're in that same way that we were, that any success is great, but
The
it's not very.
2017 to 21.
Yeah, I think you want a meaningful draft pick in that top end to really kind of build around. But that's as far as like, the Islanders, to me, really boom or bust. I mean, they could be challenging for a playoff spot. They could be kind of looking towards the bottom of the division again. I mean, it really all depends, and if they kind of don't have that immediate chemistry, you can only wonder, how long is this going to go before you have a complete disaster like you did the season
Do
before.
you think if they have a disaster season, Lou is out of there? Lou Lamoriello?
Well, I mean, he's been given a long enough leash. I mean, at a point, you have to do something. And um, do they have a whole lot to play with at the deadline? Not especially. So it remains to be seen, especially, like I said, if they get off to one of those really bad starts, um, that could really, really cement their future for them. But um, the Devils, I would maybe put in that kind of category because I think they made improvements too, like you said. But if they had that kind of eruptive start, maybe they add on. But that's also scary because I don't think they're really quite ready for that as well. But it's funny, people challenge the idea of this rebuild, but this has really been 4 years, and it's been such a quick turnaround to
It
go
could take
from.
it could take close to a decade before you get it
Hmm.
right. Like so,
Hmm. Oh, in Edmonton, come on, you have to, you got Connor McDavid willing games, setting records in the playoffs for for the season. I feel like that he's had these last 3 years, the for what he's doing in modern day hockey. I mean, you have to build around this guy, and you have to pull the trigger. And if you don't, this guy's gonna,
did they get
demand
their
to be back out of
goaltending
there.
finally figured out? You think that's gonna?
No, and
I
and
don't see it for them either.
And I would say that it's getting to be time for like the guys in our division, the Capitals, the Penguins, like who's gonna be these top dog teams. And I think you're gonna start to see the tide shift a little bit across the NHL. But really as far as where we're sitting, I'm really looking forward to just if my early predictions, we make the playoffs 100%, and we make a deep enough run to at least at the deadline look to add a piece. But we really have to. I was watching some math earlier. It's not looking like we can really add, much more than $3 to $4 million at the deadline.
Unless
So
we gave up a valuable piece, but at that point, then what are we doing?
yeah, but for me, it's like, just we're so exciting to watch right now that like it's hard to watch some of these teams that you watched for so long be these top dogs, and they're kind of like the ground is falling out from beneath them.
Well, I feel like if things don't work out, like where we don't, like I agree with you. I feel like the same thing. Playoffs will happen, deep push for the playoffs, but you got to think of the how the Avalanche did it. They were knocking on the door for the last 3 or 4 years, getting close, tagging, plugging, and playing different pieces in until they figured out something that worked. I think we will be in a similar position for the next 4 years.
Yeah, that's what I kind of mean. I feel like it's up to getting there to find out, like, okay, what do we really need? And like it's like learning a job. The only way to really like learn it is to like kind of screw up and like
keep
get
going through
there.
the season. Yeah.
Yeah, and just like figure it out when you get there, like, oh, okay, this is what we really need. So, are we there yet? No, but I think we're ready to at least go to work. You know what I mean? And we can get there, and we can learn kind of like what we really need. So that's why I think I'm excited about.
I'm excited, Steve. I just can't wait for it to be October. Hoodies, hockey. I'm ready.
Me too, man. Well, I'll talk to you soon, brother.
All right. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, man.
Have a great one.